All right, so improving or staying the same. So I think overall we've got some optimism in the room on the economy. Let's talk about education, because there's a huge link between education, the economy, and jobs, and I think that's something that Twin West has really been a leader on. So share with us a little bit your party's visions for educating the next generation of students. Who is our future workforce, and what role special interest groups like the teachers' unions and others should play in shaping a strong, accountable education system in the future and closing our achievement gaps, which actually we've got some pretty major problems with achievement gaps in this state. So let's talk about what our educational system should look like in the future. And why don't we go ahead, Tony, we'll start with you on that one. How would you look at our education system?
Well, sure. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that from the governor's perspective that the education, K-12, is that better? All right. I think it's pretty obvious from the governor's position that the K-12 education has been something that he's tried to hold harmless even in these very, very difficult budget times. And that's because of the importance of early education and K-12 education to getting people a start in life. However, I think it's important as we go forward that we need to look at education and all parts of what state government does for possible reform. I mean, I think the statistic is, and some of the legislators I'm sure can correct me, I think 46 or 48% of state budget is involved with education. That's a pretty big part of the budget, and we need to look at how we can get more bang for the buck, quite frankly, out of education, because we do have achievement gaps, especially in the inner city. We spend the most per student in the inner city, and yet we get the least result. And so it's not just a matter of how much money we're spending, but it's also a matter of how we're spending it. And that's why we're advocating, and I think that Senator Olson brought this up about how crisis is a time for reform, and I think that's true in this session, but more importantly next session for the next legislature and for the next governor. Education is going to be an area where we need to be committed to it, but we can't just assume that just writing a bigger and bigger check every time is going to be the solution to that problem.
Donna, your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously education is at the top of many of our priorities, especially when we're facing the steep economic challenges. We have to make sure that our young folks have every opportunity to become productive citizens and to compete globally. We've had a difficult time in our state, obviously. The governor has, I believe, unnecessarily slashed education funding. With the imposition of No Child Left Behind put upon our schools, that has created a great stress. It's been unfunded. It's increased the size of our classrooms. It's put stress on our teachers to teach to the test rather than to allow them more freedom in decision making and implementing specific strategies that will work in their particular classrooms. So I think we need to look at reforming and letting go of No Child Left Behind, and providing that support and for our teachers to basically understand and implement teaching strategies that will work.
The Independence Party does not buy the premise that more money necessarily leads to better educational outcomes, and we begin from that premise. So then we begin looking at reform. What sort of changes do we need? And there are whole-scale systemic changes that need to be addressed. And to your question, I think that interest groups in this debate are protecting the status quo than really looking at reform. And some of the reforms, we are working this is the 21st century. We're competing against China and India, and for us to continue to teach just 9 months of the year when no one else is doing that, that's backwards. I mean, when we're looking at just teaching our kids from 8 to 3 o'clock, we have to fundamentally revisit that. We have to look at getting rid of those teachers who aren't performing. And believe me, there are those. And so I think that what the Independence Party is going to bring to this debate is we don't accept money from any special interest groups, but what we're going to bring is also a forthright and honest discussion about the real reforms that need to be made in order to make Minnesota truly competitive in the 21st century.
Can I just follow up for a second? Because I think this is a really important issue. I mean, part of what's going to be the problem here, and Jack outlined this, there are a lot of powerful special interests in teachers' unions, other groups, who are going to oppose any attempt at reform. And you see it every day at the legislature, I think. And this is going to be something that I think the people of the state are ready for it. I hope the business community is ready for it, because you're going to have to fight the fight to truly get reform. And there's going to be powerful interests who will oppose that, who will spend a lot of money to oppose it. And we have to be prepared to dig in. I think the people of this state are ready for education reform, just like they're ready for tax reform. I think that they know that the state's broke, and we got to change how we do things.
So
And I'd like to say let's
Donna-
not demonize teachers' unions. They represent the men
Not
and the
teachers, just the unions.
who represent the men and women that take care, that teach our children and that guide them and that provide something that is of incredible value to our society. So we need to work with the teachers' unions. We need to have open, honest discussions, and we need to recognize that the unions are representative of the men and women that are in our public schools.
Let's ask one of the reforms that has been discussed at the Capitol that we have not been successful. It's actually hurt us quite a bit from a federal funding standpoint, is this concept of alternative teaching licensure. So if I could just maybe ask each one of you to talk about where your party is on that, why you support it, why you don't support it. So Donna, why don't we start with you?
Well, you know, we don't have a particular platform position on it. I mean, I think that we have to explore all possibilities. There's some discussion going on within our party. We're very much open, and I think that right now, in times like these, we have to be open to all possibilities. We can't stick to one political ideology. We've seen where that has gotten us in the past, and I think that we need to be open to all our alternatives.
Okay, Tony?
I don't think there's no doubt that we have to be open to all alternatives when it comes to either alternative licensure or merit pay or tenure reform or those sorts of things. So it's possible. So in the private sector, if someone's not doing a good job, you can fire them. And you can't really do that. My wife's on the school board. I know for a fact you can't really do that in the school system, and that's part of the problem. I mean, we want better and better results, and we keep getting told that we have to write a bigger and bigger check to do that. We have spent billions and trillions of dollars in this country trying to solve these problems, and arguably they're worse now than they were 40 and 45 years ago when these idealists back in the 1960s hoisted all these programs on us. I mean, gosh, people are ready for reform. Not just because we're on some kind of ideological jihad. We're broke, guys. We got to look for new ways to do things. I mean, if this were a business, we'd be in Chapter 11 selling off the assets. So let's get real here, and let's not just. You know, I think the Republicans are willing to open up, maybe even go after some of our sacred cows, if Democrats will too, so that we can really get some reform.
Jack?
The Independence Party actually doesn't have a specific platform in our, or plank in our platform on this issue, but I can tell you the principle of the party fully supports alternative teaching methods. When you look at the crisis in particularly the inner city public schools, where 50% of all children are failing, we have to figure out how to reach those individuals in a different way. And if that means bringing in different teachers, individuals who either have practical real-world business experience into the schools, let's figure out how to do it. If there are other individuals who haven't necessarily met all of the standardization and credentialing techniques of standard teachers, but can better reach these kids, should we do it? Absolutely. And the reason why this is so important to you as small business owners is because 50% of our workforce is now going to be coming from minority students. If we don't figure out how to reach them, all of us are going to suffer the consequences. And so we need to reach out and figure out how to get new teachers into the process.
Okay, let's ask you guys a question.